Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to present the Speaker for this afternoon's ceremony, Mr Tony Brennan, Deputy Commissioner, British High Commission, Canberra. Tony Brennan has been Deputy High Commissioner to Australia since August 2012. Prior to that, he was the Chargé d'Affaires at the British Embassy in Khartoum, Sudan, from April 2012, after having been Deputy Head of Mission in Khartoum from July 2010. Tony was Deputy High Commissioner in Tanzania and has also served as the Head of Zimbabwe section in the Czech Ministry of Foreign Affairs and as an advisor in the Office of the President of the Czech Republic. Before joining the Foreign Office, Tony was a Sport Development Officer, a teacher in Zimbabwe, and he also worked as a systems engineer for IBM UK. Tony also has an MA in Mathematics from Oxford University and can speak and write in both French and Czech to an extensive level. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr Tony Brennan.
Chancellor, members of the University, today's graduates and their justifiably proud families, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honour to play this small part in this important, in fact life-changing day for today's graduates. I've never previously spoken at a graduation ceremony, and it will become clear in the next 10 minutes or so if we should have left things that way. In fact, I was delighted to learn that there are still speeches at graduation ceremonies at all. I'd assumed that all universities just showed the YouTube video of Tim Minchin's speech at the UWA graduation ceremony in 2013, which says everything that could possibly be said in a situation such as this. If you haven't seen it, you must. I mean, not now. I mean, it would be dispiriting if you all got your phones out and started going, this is really good, but maybe in slower time. In fact, this event is taking me back to my own graduation all those years ago, the main difference being that mine was in Latin and I had no idea when I'd actually graduated. In fact, I was mystified as to why I was invited to give this address today, until I realised that the brand ambassador for the University of Wollongong is Adam Gilchrist, and so I understand that you're all comfortable in the company of internationally renowned wicketkeepers. And this leads to my first observation of the day. There are always various routes to a given endpoint. Your brand ambassador chose the route which is best called being very, very good at something. He played cricket in a relatively small number of countries, but extraordinarily well. My approach was different. Founded on a love of the game only attainable to the London-born son of Sydney-sider parents, coupled with a solid base of sporting mediocrity, my route to a smidgen of cricketing renown came by playing the game badly, but in a lot of countries. 28 at the last count. I brought cricket for the first time to the Czech Republic, and for the first time after a 50-year gap to Zanzibar. So the first lesson for today from me is if you want to be a big fish, sometimes you have to dig a really small pond. My remit today is to share some advice and reflections with our graduates as they look forward to developing their careers. This daunting invitation came at an interesting time for me, as I've gone through some significant life events of late, and such events give pause for reflection. I became a father 2 years ago, and I turned 50 2 months ago. So I'm 50, and my son is 2. The difference is he looks his age. He's actually about 2.5 now. He's still living at home. I've started dropping hints, but he's having none of it. And this leads to my next observation. Whatever you do in life, and whatever you've planned, there'll be surprises. Some of you graduates might think you have a clear plan for life and know what your next step will be and the step after that. Good luck. It may work out like that. Most of you, though, will not be quite sure what happens next, and that's okay too. Now, your adult lives start today. You've got a degree from an internationally renowned academic institution, which is a pretty good starting point. But you don't have to decide today or tomorrow what you'll do for the rest of your days. You'll wake up tomorrow morning, ready for the early morning run, healthy breakfast and attendance at the 9 a.m. lecture, which surely defined the pattern of your day here in Wollongong, only to remember that you're not a student anymore. You'll want in due course to get a job and hopefully start a career. But, with apologies to the parents here who are quietly and correctly congratulating themselves on a 2-decade job well done, it might take a little while before you settle in on the right thing for you. You might go down some paths which lead to apparent dead ends. But these won't be mistakes. They only become mistakes if you don't learn from them. If I'd applied to join the British Foreign Office at your stage in life, armed with my maths degree, experience running an undergraduate comedy club and dubious wicket-keeping prowess, I wouldn't have got past the first sift. So I spent the next 5 years after graduating in a variety of pursuits. I worked in IT, and more about that later. I worked for a non-governmental organisation, and I taught maths and science in a bush school in rural Zimbabwe. And as a sidebar, working in the developing world is as good a thing as you can possibly spend your time doing that I can think of. You may not make a huge difference to the developing world, but the developing world will make a lifelong difference to you. So, at the end of those 5 years, I'd somehow put together a CV which made me a credible candidate for the Foreign Office, and here I am. This wasn't a plan, which is a shame, because if it had been, it would have been quite a good one. But it's just how things happened, and looking back, there does seem to have been some purpose to it. I've now worked for the Foreign Office in 6 countries, I've met Nobel laureates and indicted war criminals, and I've met many, many people in between. Each country has taught me more about the world and even more about myself. So another small piece of advice: travel. Spending time travelling might seem like an indulgence, but this is certainly not the case. Travelling and ideally working abroad is a finishing school for the globally connected citizen. Now today you're graduating, and graduating gives you a unique opportunity to start down a new path. I went to a college to the northwest of London which prided itself on its egalitarian principles. We were looked on by those around us as a bunch of lefties, and it's true that when there was a protest march to be joined, a large delegation of us would be somewhere near the front. Some 20 years after graduating, I went to a college reunion, and it was striking to see quite how many of my former fellow protesters had gone on to do rather well in banking. One of them owned a football club. Now, this is not a criticism, and I heartily congratulate them on their success, but it did make me think. What nobody told me at your stage in life was that it's okay to make money. Making this your primary objective in life is something else, and that's a choice that some of you will make, but hopefully many of you won't. I didn't, and I stand by that decision, most of the time. What mattered to me was finding something that allowed me to live a life consistent with the values which I developed while at university, while still being able to afford the occasional day at a test match. And there are many professions: teaching, nursing, even the public service, which might not pay top dollar, but allow you to contribute to your society in a positive and constructive way. And I hope many of you will consider spending at least some of your future in one of those. Now, secure in the knowledge that I'm overstaying my welcome, and with some trepidation given I'm speaking to the humanities faculty, I will allow my inner geek to have the final word. Be comfortable with technology. There's more to technology than Instagram and Facebook. It's what makes the modern world. I mentioned earlier that straight after graduating, I worked in IT. This was in the late 80s, for those of you who are trying to do the sums. I worked for what was then the world's biggest computer company, and one of my first tasks in that job was to ensure that the 4 personal computers, you may remember those, the 4 personal computers which were available to the 100 staff in our team were configured as powerfully as the software of the time allowed. This involved upgrading their fixed disk to a staggering 10 megabytes of storage. This device here has 6,000 times that capacity. And this has happened in my working life. So imagine what will happen in yours. For my generation, you either did technology or you didn't. Your generation doesn't have that choice, so make sure you're with the programme. But that's for the future. Today is about celebrating your achievements, spending time with the lifelong friends you've met in this place in the last few years, and resisting the temptation to remove any of the fittings to keep as a souvenir. Perhaps in 20 years you will think graduation day, and the silicon chip implanted in your cerebral cortex will call up the photos and videos you're taking today. If then you look back and think that anything I've just said today resonates with the future you, then it's been a great privilege to come here from the British High Commission to share those thoughts. And if you look back and think it was all nonsense, then my employers from the French Embassy will apologise. Thank you all for your attention, and congratulations on today's event.